Alright, so I woke up this morning before my alarm, had about 6 hours of sleep, kind of tracking all my health stuff because I've been dealing with chronic pain and something just still feels off. So went to OMM therapy yesterday. Still have some hip pain. Tried to dance it out and do some stretches and things to get that out, because also hip pain and back pain on a spiritual level can mean that you're storing anger in your hips, or need more support for the lower back. So they correlate with that in a spiritual sense. On a physical sense, tension, anxiety, things like that can just affect your whole body. And I've definitely been having shoulder and neck tension as well. So talked to my doctor about increasing the Wellbutrin, because we've been trying that out to manage and the depression that I was experiencing for a rather prolonged period of time, about a couple months, with it getting worse. Well, actually probably more than a couple months, but I was kind of staving that off by doing some expressive arts practices and performing, but it was very difficult to perform and show up. I was definitely pushing myself, and then was in exhaustion and burnout afterwards. Yeah, it was like that depression, anxiety was just kind of running in the background, especially because I'm dealing with some financial issues, scarcity issues, that are real and not just a mindset thing, because I've tried to address it with mindset and going to support groups and other things like that. So kind of experimenting on myself with holistic health, to see what works and bring it to others like me once I find things that are working, or people that want to also experiment with me. And but I woke up this morning with a headache. I went to bed actually with a bit of a tension headache. I had some rose cacao and then went out. I also probably need to drink a little more water right now, and nourish my body with some food, because my appetite's been a little low, which can happen with the Wellbutrin as well. But yeah, I got home after being at the doctor, and I couldn't decide what I wanted to eat. I wasn't super hungry because I had chicken nuggets and fries with ketchup and honey mustard, and a organic apple juice box. Did the little kids meal because sometimes my inner child that's what they want. So I am also working on reparenting my inner child. So I had that before I went by Ventura County Social Services, because I need to reapply for food stamps because of the not making enough per month right now to cover all of my financial obligations. Namely, the one that is the biggest stressor is covering my rent. I've been having to put it on credit cards for since about March or April. And that is a big stressor, because I'm just like quickly getting into more and more debt without the potential for that income coming in. I did get a little bit of hope and relief looking at a place to live that is nearby, so not too big of a change, but it will be a big change going from living by myself with a lot of space in a 2-bedroom, because I was living here with my father before he passed away. And when he passed away, could not qualify to, like, income qualified to move into a new place, because I had just been caring for him mostly, and doing respite care on the side when I could, or taking on like small gigs when I could, and having to hire a person to step in for me during those times. But yeah, his health plummeted in 2022, and it led to his death in the summer of 2022 in July. And I was able to use my Reiki certification and the skills and knowledge of that and guided visualization to help clear a brain bleed that he had from a bad fall in that February before his death. But there were other medical conditions that he had that just he couldn't come back from. And he finally stopped giving me permission to do the Reiki, because I think, he was ready to slough off this mortal coil and go into the spirit realm, where he would be free from the pain of the body. That's of course been hard, and there's been a grieving process that, different things come and go at different times, but I am happy for him that he is free. His spirit is free, back to source, or like my family believes, back to God in heaven. And that was one of the reasons when we were able to talk about it. That was one of the reasons he wasn't quite ready to go yet, but he didn't want brain surgery and refused that, and didn't want to be revived in the hospital if, be put on tubes and machines and things. So we had to respect his wishes in that, but thankfully he did give me the permission to do the Reiki, and we were able to clear that brain bleed so that he could function better for the months leading up to his passing, which was, he just stopped breathing. So he stopped breathing, and they said it was, a heart attack, or not a heart attack, but like heart failure. And there's a history of heart failure and heart disease, dis-ease in my family. And looking over my life, and with the information that I can gather from conversations with my family, and medical records that I have seen, like medical records from my father, I believe there is a spiritual and emotional and social emotional component to those ailments that my family is experiencing, and that there is intergenerational trauma going on and some other things. And I've been trying to figure out how to heal myself and this complex system with magical practices, as well as science-based, I don't know if I'd call them practices, but symptom reduction methods, and symptom management methods, or treatments. But yeah, things are still there, and come back up, and it's just also, somewhat a process of entropy in general. But yeah, there's more to be said about that. But yeah, I think I'm going on about 6 hours of sleep right now, which I do feel rested. The headache is still here. And so that's making it a little hard to concentrate. I'm going to experiment a little today by seeing, what works. I did just drink some water. It's like, let's start with some simple solutions. The headache started around, I think it was like 2 a.m. Right before I started, or no, before 2 a.m. Because right before I started doing some Uber Eats deliveries, as a way to try to get some monetary flow in. So after eating, came home, went to Social Security office, wasn't able to do the paperwork there, but got the packet, made a post online, marketing services, replied to a couple comments. I was like, what am I going to eat for dinner? Do I need to start making that? Oh, I also went to the storage space to see a storage space, because if I move into this other spot, I may have to put some of my things in storage, though they are thankfully open to like me doing some decorating and putting some things on the wall at the space. And it's a lovely group of girls that I think we could all be lovely housemates and friends. But like I said, it will be an adjustment and a transition. And my ultimate goal would be to stay here, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to generate enough income to do that and pay off the credit card bills and then start putting things into savings to get my financial health back on track. Basically right now, my physical, emotional, financial, and many aspects of my health are struggling right now. And slowly getting the mental and emotional health back on track. But my therapist, or a couple different therapists that I've consulted, psychiatrist and a therapist, and my primary care doctor are thinking it might be good, the best course of action for me to do either outpatient or inpatient services to get the mental health back on track, to be able to like focus on that in an environment. I hesitate to do that because in those situations, especially inpatient, I don't have control over what I eat and schedule and things, and I'm not sure if the typical schedule will work for me. But that's also something I'm experimenting with, because I've been a night owl for as long as I can remember. But was that a symptom of feeling unsafe in my home and like I needed to know what was going on at night, or a way to have alone time and some peace and processing time in the evenings, or to basically gather information, because I was trying to understand humans and adults and what was going on in my family and relationships. because I grew up in a fairly toxic situation where there was a like push-pull power dynamic going on with my parents, and basically hiding of any flaws, and kind of a distortion, some distortions of reality. I say that with compassion because I think, there were things that my mother and father were dealing with that were based in trauma as well. My mother's mother had CPTSD, probably, that was diagnosed at one point as schizophrenia and at another point as bipolar. But the trauma never was really addressed, and a lot of that was from her growing up in a large family without a lot of resources. They worked in the cotton mill, so they were basically what some people would call, derogatorily, poor white trash in Georgia. My grandmother was the first of her family, I believe. I know she had another brother that was in the Navy, but she was the first of her family to go to college, and she got a nursing degree, and then she was a nurse in World War II. But she was also on the, she saw some horrific things and treated like horrific cases, and that affected her. My mom said she would go catatonic sometimes, and have these bouts of mental illness where she would be hospitalized, and from a young age my mom really had to step up and do the task of the home, such as like cooking and cleaning, which she says she really enjoyed and still enjoys, but I do question if that was like her highest like use of her time and skills. They were what the family needed, but she's a very intelligent woman, and she could have possibly like made money of her own in other fields, but she was focused on like domestic care, which didn't pay anything, which made her dependent on my dad for many years, and then she started substitute teaching, and she had a business degree, but things had changed by the time she went back to work, or business education. She had started in fashion merchandising, and but yeah, when they had children, she decided like she wanted to focus on home. I think there's another component to like my father was jealous and he didn't want her to have a job. She'd also done real estate, and that was the typical setup for male-female relationships in the 50s, 60s. It was changing some in the 80s, by the time I was born, but like I like to say sometimes Georgia is about 20 years behind the rest of the world, and I'm not sure if it actually is a good thing that we now have, many places we now have to have two incomes to be able to just afford basic needs and a sort of basic level of comfort, and operations for a family. But that's a whole nother topic as well. But anyway, so where was I going with this? Yeah, and then my father was also diagnosed with manic depression. They saw like 8 different counselors to work on marital stuff, and it just, so nothing was really budging. My dad would get upset if the therapist sided with my mother. Like, he didn't really want to look at his own things. I think part of that was trauma as well. Though he was diagnosed with manic depression, I did see some correlations with how his manic episodes seemed to coincide with his heart surgeries, and with him going into the hospital for heart attacks and things, which were some of them anxiety attacks, and were the anxiety attacks because his heart was not working properly. There's like, what exactly was going on, because there's several levels to our health that can be affected and affect our body, from the spiritual to the social to the emotional, mental, all of those things are informing each other, and it's, sometimes it's which came first, like, but then the last time he was hospitalized, before I took over managing his care at his request, they put him on Vraylar. He had been taking lithium before that. Vraylar is a newer medication, by, I think, can't remember the company. I had to do a lot of paperwork to actually get him that medication, because otherwise it was $1,500 a month without insurance, and I think his insurance only covered like a portion of that. So, and his retirement for the railroad was not going to cover that and all of his bills and mine, so that I could take care of and dedicate my time to managing his care and my own, as I was still dealing with some chronic pain from car accidents and emotional pain from trauma myself. I was in an abusive relationship before that, and had several traumatic experiences that had left their mark. So yeah, but then he had normal pressure hydrocephalus, which is fluid on the brain. Tried to address that through surgery, but he still had dementia symptoms. So we're working on, getting a diagnosis for that, seeing what that actually was about. It was hard to get into a appointment for the neurologist, and then there was also what was the other? Treating the heart disease. His heart actually did improve while he was living with me, because I tried to change up our diet, and stick to more of like a healthy kind of California fusion. I still, cook some of our favorite meals from Georgia and from growing up, but also bringing in the concepts and things that I learned about health through studying with an Ayurvedic practitioner, and then looking at other health studies and suggestions from the heart doctors. And that that was a win for us, but unfortunately, the mental health, the brain health, those sorts of things just were not improving. Partially it's because he didn't want to do the things that the doctors were suggesting, like playing with some of the apps and things that help to stimulate your brain health. and your neurobiology. But I think part of the reason he didn't want to is because it really brought light to the deficit he was experiencing with that, and not feeling competent was like a blow to his ego, and so he was avoiding that on an emotional level, which I completely understand. It's like, if you don't have a lot of spoons, or a lot of capacity before you're at zero in your emotional well-being levels, then you're not going to want to do things that tick it down, that deplete it more. So he got to where he just wanted to watch the Great British Baking Show, but then he started having swallowing issues as well because of Parkinsonism, which they hadn't completely labeled the diagnosis Parkinson's disease or just Parkinsonism at the time, that his health had just like plummeted. But through some also research that I did and what the doctors were telling us, a lot of times that can come about from prolonged use of lithium and manic depression medicine, because there's a component to Parkinsonism that dopamine, like you need, I want to say less, I might be wrong, don't quote me on this, but please fact check it. There's basically an inverse relationship. Like manic depression medication is trying to regulate the periods of manic and depression and keep someone, on a more of an even keel, or even an emotional level, by regulating the dopamine and certain things in the brain. And Parkinsonism is like the opposite. So long story short, the doctors were hesitant to give him Parkinson medicine because it would basically just counteract the medicine they were using to treat the bipolar, which was Vraylar. And to take down his dosage of Vraylar could mean that he would have a manic episode, and then there's the fear of him having a dementia episode and possibly like eloping or having sundowners, or having something where he would be at a risk to himself or others. So we're kind of like caught between a rock and a hard place, and as doctors, we went with their best course of action. Well, later I started seeing ads for Vraylar that said it could cause death in dementia patients. And that's, that was hard to see while grieving, because I was like, did the thing that was supposed to be helping him actually kill him? Because it was a newer, less studied medication at the time. And why did his doctors give him that? Well, of course, they didn't know at the time. I want to believe that they didn't know. They were giving him the best tools they had in their tool belt from their training. I wish he would have allowed and been open to more alternative healing methods, and we'd had the money to pursue some of those. But he was not. So, I was managing the course of action he wanted to take. Though I think at times, he would question that too. And I think that's sometimes why he stopped taking his medication, which that is actually in the DSM for manic depression. Of one thing that people with it do is, when they have a manic episode, they think, oh, I'm fine, I don't need my medication anymore. So anyway, but the more I look at it and think about it and learn new things, I'm kind of wondering if my father also had undiagnosed ADHD. My brother and I both have it. I think my mom has it too, and is that a symptom of just like our society right now, or of being a more synergistic thinker that switches from right to left brain, and sometimes the switch doesn't happen so fast, or is even the ADHD more of a symptom of patterns and basically emotional avoidance that has in the past, or at one point, was a protective mechanism for dealing with the trauma that my family had gone through. What was my father, in fact, dealing with CPTSD as well, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know, I'm looking at this and looking at this in myself because, one, I don't want my brother and I or my niece to continue these patterns. I want to see us well and thriving. When someone has money and resources, it's a little easier to cover up the symptoms and the things, but where I'm at now and in my unmasking process, because I and some of my family might have had undiagnosed autism, I'm realizing, and with all these breakdowns and medical labeling, are these even the correct labels, or is that's a whole another rabbit hole to get down into. But because autism can have connections with trauma. Some of the symptoms and expressions also are related to trauma, because being an autistic person in society that expects everyone to be normal or act in a certain way causes certain traumas to the individual when they are rejected for being themselves, and they just process things differently and act differently. But yeah, they're still studying all of that and coming to new conclusions and uncovering new knowledge about these things. Ancient cultures, they treated the ones that were different as, or some cultures, they revered them. They thought they were closer connected to spirit, which many of them might be. And what if many of our autistic people or people diagnosed with autism and other things are actually just unrealized spiritual gifts and psychic abilities that that in modern Western culture we aren't nurturing and honoring and developing in children, because they're just not fitting into the mold that we've made with the prison industrial complex. And there are places that have alternative schools and home, there's homeschooling that can change sort of how the normal government sponsored school systems are doing. And there's even changes in our school systems now, but this is what I grew up in, what my parents grew up in, was that from about 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, and sometimes extended hours before after school for tutoring. People are sitting in a desk and, receiving information from the teacher, and that doesn't work for everyone. There's, there's people that learn better in a circle and experiencing things and doing kinetic things, and some teachers incorporate that in their classrooms. I was lucky enough to be part of the gifted program in my elementary and middle school, and have teachers, as in like the college track program in high school, and have teachers that were more creative and that taught in a more creative way, sometimes, within those bounds of what they were required to do. But, that helped me. I don't know if I would have survived school, but I was burnt out by then in school. And then I went to art school, which was better for me because it was small cohorts of people, with more freedom to do their own projects, though that also posed a challenge as well, because somewhat I need the structure and the knowing what to expect and the definitive this not as subjective grading kind of thing, though. I think it was a relief from meeting the stricter goals and expectations during my undergrad. But I am in this position now where I'm like, okay, it is very hard to make a sustained living as an independent contractor and as an artist, and I know there are people doing it, but it is a very competitive field, just like any of the arts, and I've done performance art and other things. It's very competitive, and there's not a definitive clocking in and clocking out. You're working, it's even hard to track how much you're really making per hour, and sometimes you're not really making much per hour at all, or anything, and you're actually spending more than you're making. And then if no one wants to buy what you're selling or participate in what you're selling, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do to support yourself? So many people have side jobs and side hustles and other things, and that's what I've been trying to do, but I just don't have the energy to do it all anymore, especially dealing with chronic health and other things, which I'm, trying to address holistically through a hodgepodge of various Eastern, Western, esoteric practices and knowledge that I have picked up over the years in my various studies and experiences, post my undergrad in photography and conceptual art, which they call digital media at the time, but now it's called art expanded forms because anything non-traditional, but I spent many years as an art model and muse in classrooms, and there's also things with the chemicals there that being a organically sensitive person, I could not continue that as full-time gig. I still do it periodically because I have relationships built with people and love to see them, and when I have the time to do it, like to maintain those relationships. But it is getting to a point where I've definitely got to do something else, and been trying to do that, but it's been a journey, and it's continued to be a journey, and I will continue sharing that journey with you guys in hopes that it will help others that are having similar experiences and journeys and looking for hope and potential solutions, and experimenting with their own. So I got on here also because there are plant allies and mushrooms and things that are often helpful. And I just got my Aura cacao shipment in, and who doesn't love some chocolates? But this is sustainably grown, ethically grown, not just sustainably but ethically grown, because it's supporting the farmers and even helping them level up so that they, you know, can rise out of poverty and dependence as well. Giving them tools and new practices, collaborating with them to develop those as well, which is amazing. It's vegan, keto, GMO free, soy free, and sugar free. Of course, I do like my sugar, so I'm probably going to put a little honey or maple syrup in mine when I make it. But this is 100%, and I'll show you back soon. 100% ceremonial grade cacao, and I'm going to have some magical mushroom today and see if that helps. My headache is subsiding a little bit since taking the ibuprofen and having water. Start with the simple solutions first. But I am going to take this to see if it improves some of my mental clarity, and helps with focus today, because it's got a lot of mushrooms in it. It's got reishi, chaga, turkey tail, lion's mane. Lion's mane's a good one for helping with the brain connections. Cordyceps, maitake, shiitake, oyster, poria, filinus. I'm not familiar with that one. If someone is, tell me what it does. And tremella mushrooms. I don't know if I'm pronouncing some of these right. Some of these are even new to me. I work with the lion's mane and chaga and reishi a lot, but yeah, I'm excited to see if this helps and how it tastes. I'll let you guys know in the next video.